This is The Space Shot, episode 289 for February 27th, 2018. Positively thrilled and delighted for the future. I'm John Molnix. Apologies for the rough voice, I'm still fighting back a bit of a cold, so bear with me as I work through this. I've got a quick historical note to mention before I start today's episode. Yesterday, I was wondering about the fastest turnaround for launches at Cape Canaveral. I had totally forgotten about the Agena and Gemini launches that I've spoken about in the past. My memory was spurred about those launches by an article that I read this morning. Stephen Clark has a piece on spaceflightnow.com about the dual SpaceX and United Launch Alliance launches at the Cape this Thursday. He also has some history about the quickest launch turnarounds, quote, rockets lifted off from Cape Canaveral less than 2 hours apart on 4 occasions in 1966. His piece is up first in the show notes, so be sure to check it out. Now for the main part of the podcast. 2 days ago, while talking with Sarah Ray Werner, we got on the subject of positivity and creating content that's hopeful. I've mentioned this subject before, and it was the topic of an older episode of The Space Shot, episode 103 to be exact. I've refined my thoughts from that episode a bit, and I've been able to think about it some more over the past few months, so that's going to be the topic for today's episode. I think it's apparent by now that I love space and space history. Studying the progress we've made as a species in the last 50 plus years makes me incredibly optimistic about our future. We live in incredible times. Technology is matching human ambition, and it is glorious. We still have a long way to go, but we are moving in the right direction. When the news gets dark, and when it may seem like there's no point in being positive about humanity, remember, we are remarkable as a species, even when we treat each other poorly. 100 years ago, cars, airplanes, and many electronic things we take for granted weren't in use. Up until the middle of the 20th century, humans hadn't even managed to send satellites into space. Average lifespans were shorter, illiteracy was widespread, and many creature comforts we take for granted, and tons that weren't even dreamed of, were things that only the very wealthy could benefit from. Diseases that killed and disabled indiscriminately, like polio, were widespread and struck at all economic strata. So how did we get from being a species that didn't have the ability to cure diseases like polio to entering the space age in such a short time? Human ingenuity and innovation. In the past 100 years, our species has progressed in a positive direction. Yes, there's still suffering, and we have a lot of work to do, but the strides that have been made are truly remarkable when compared with human history leading up to the past century. We're just getting ready to enter the golden age of solar system exploration. Robotic and human spaceflight are about to undergo a transformation that's unlike anything we've ever seen or could have imagined. NASA and commercial space companies are pushing forward with designs that will expand human presence into the solar system in a way that hasn't been possible until now. Space and exploration have also entered the popular culture in a big way. How many people do you think could name one of the space shuttles or some of the astronauts that walked on the moon? Conversely, how many people do you think could tell you that a red Tesla with Starman was launched into space? I'd be willing to wager that the resulting answers would be in Starman's favor by a long shot. The launch of the Falcon Heavy has put space in the forefront of the minds of average people around the world. Space is no longer the topic for a small segment of the population. As members of the spaceflight community, we need to capitalize on this moment. We need to continue to tell the stories of our history in space, while also sharing the visions of the wonders that await us as we push back to the moon and beyond. We're also entering a time when we will begin to grow the launch industry. For too long, the launch market has been a zero-sum game. Certain companies winning at the expense of others would have left us permanently marooned in low Earth orbit. The blossoming of commercial companies will help make access to space less expensive, and it will shift the conversations that we have about the economics of space. This will open up new ventures that we have only been able to dream of until now. I've noticed that people on Facebook and Twitter tend to peddle doom and gloom when it comes to rockets or a program they aren't fond of. Negativity is cheap and easy to sell. If I wanted to make my podcast easy to research and produce, I could just put up negative doom and gloom content each day. Frankly, I think that's boring. Instead, I try to look through history to highlight the incredible things we have accomplished during the start of one of the most amazing periods in human history. Part of why I'm documenting me learning about space history and sharing it with you is that I want a foundation for other long-term projects I'm working on. Right now, I want to share space history and fun stuff like pop culture with you. And in the future, I want to have longer, more in-depth conversations about space history, storytelling, exploration, and where we will be as a species when we reach the 100th anniversary of the launch of Sputnik. I don't want you to think that I'm ever going to sugarcoat things. I won't do that, and if you ever think I do, call me out on it so we can chat. I'm going to always work on making sure the content I produce is positive, informative, and fun. I do have a pretty dry sense of humor, after all. The long arc of history is a positive one. Let's deploy optimism and relish in the fact that we are living in the age when humanity first began to venture away from our home planet. Don't let the temporary political or economic situations that you may be unhappy with in your country get you down. We will be better off in the future compared to where we are now. Let's make that journey together. I'm John Molnix, and I'll catch you on the flip side.